Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the sixth and final session of this International Sail Training Conference. My name is Robbie Crow and I am the Chairman of the Sail Training International Youth Council. Today we are going to be presenting a session about effective youth mentoring with youths mentoring youths. All of your presenters today are all on the Sail Training International Youth Council. And if you don't know them and you've got one from your country, then please, after the session, feel free to get in touch with them. They're all very knowledgeable about the subject, but I'm not going to say any more about their backgrounds or where they came from. That's their jobs. I will introduce the speakers briefly and then let you move on. First of all, we have Eva Kostard, who is the German representative. Then we have Michelle Rutten, who is the representative for the Netherlands. And we have Brian Holman, who is the US representative and also the Vice Chairman. I'll now hand you over to the very capable hands of Eva. Thank you.
So thank you very much and welcome to our session about effective youth mentoring. It's great to have you all here. I will give you a short overview about what we will be talking about today. So First, we will introduce ourselves because we come from quite different backgrounds concerning our mentoring experience. Then Michelle will talk about the mentor's role in general and the mentor's responsibilities, followed by Brian talking about new youth mentors and what an organization should do to train a mentor and prepare the mentor for his or her first trip. And then I will talk about the benefits that the organization can gain out of a mentor trip, and then we will of course close with a question and answer session.
Hello all, my name is Michelle. I'm from the Netherlands and I am representing the youth of the Netherlands as well. I started my sailing adventure when I was 17, I think. It was in 2010 and my aunt signed me up for a trip on the Stad Amsterdam, and I totally loved it. And it happened to be Sail Amsterdam that year as well. And I don't even remember how, but somehow Windseeker got me up in their stand promoting all these sail training travels. I don't know why, but they picked me out to become a mentor for the trip in the next summer. And I wrote with and for them, I wrote this application to what was then Youth in Action to do my first mentoring trip. So what I did was writing about these day-to-day programs that we were going to do during this exchange, which had 6 countries involved, with all youngsters sailing together on what was then the Wilde Swan. I really liked this, and I continued doing mentoring, but as it happens, I was also still studying. So I was studying to becoming a speech language therapist, and actually I was thinking of quitting school or taking an in-between year and to become a professional sailor. Actually, I'm happy I didn't do so. I graduated, but before I got my graduation certificate, I was out on the sea sailing again. Ever since, I've been sailing as a professional crew member. Currently, I'm sailing on the vessel Morgenster, and instead of being a mentor myself, I've been working a lot with international exchanges and mentors as well. So now, Eva will tell something about herself.
Yes, just like Michelle, I started mentoring with Michelle from Etsy Sail Training. I mentored an international exchange also with 5 different nationalities on board the Dutch barkentine Thalassa. And for the last couple of years, I've been mentoring smaller national trips for our NSTO, the Sail Training Association Germany. And other than that, I'm sailing on the Alexander von Humboldt as an AB for 5 years now.
Saving the best for last, I guess. Just kidding. Anyways, my name is Brian. I started sailing with Los Angeles Maritime Institute about 8 years ago. And from there, I moved on. I've sailed in the Great Lakes with various ships, Europa, Solandit, Lynx, had a few chances on Eagle, and I was also the lucky one that got to go from the youth council to Oman, which is where a lot of my mentoring experience was kind of culminated. So I'll speak to you. A lot of the points that I have today are actually going to be coming from this last trip to Oman.
So among a lot of people, I also see a lot of youth, maybe expected. But from all of you, who has been a mentor before? I see quite some hands. So what do you think is the most important role being a mentor? I saw Linda. Mentoring is important, yeah. But what do you understand as being as mentoring? Supporting? Sorry? Enthusiasm? Personal trust? Role model? Yes. Seeing individuals, yes. Very good. Well, these are the key points we thought about. Maybe you remember, but when you get a group on board, even if you're part of the group yourself, you're starting a whole new experience, a whole new adventure. And you're together with all these other trainees, all excited but don't know what to expect on a new ship with all new people and a new adventure ahead. So what for me is very important as a mentor is to manage and guide the group that comes on board. So give them some structure, give them some individual attention and tell them what will be going on and what we will be doing. In the beginning of the trip, they will need a lot of management actually. You don't have to do everything for them, for example, dishes or pulling on the ropes or getting them awake for the next watch. But you will have to remind them what they have to do and see what needs to be done in order to get them out there. And as soon as they know, as soon as they experienced how it all worked, they will manage themselves. But even then, they're also new to this, so they maybe never led a group or been in front of a group before. So even then, you're the backup manager for this entire group. So for me, that's a very important role, being a manager. And then second of all, you're a teacher as well. And this may be going together with SEAL training, as crew members will be teaching a lot, you will be teaching a lot, not only about SEAL training, but also about all-day life routine tasks. For example, I sailed with the Royal Navy this year, from the Dutch Royal Navy, and they're kids that want to be, they want to go to the Navy, so they're not in the Navy yet, but they're training to, well, it's like a pre-course. And part of this trip is also called happy hour, and it's an hour of day where instead of free drinks we do cleaning of the ship. And a lot of these kids, they're like 60-year-olds, never ever did something like vacuum cleaning or toilet cleaning or making the beds or whatsoever. So one of the kids comes up to me and asks like, Michelle, how do I get like the plug back into the machine of the vacuum cleaner? It's like, huh? Don't you know? But then you have to realize as a mentor that teaching can also be in the small parts, not rather the big parts of SEAL training, but also the small things as teaching how a vacuum machine works. This is in big work together with the crew. And then you're a facilitator. You will create this moment of learning and growing for the trainees. So instead of chewing it up for them, I don't know, it's a Dutch saying, I guess, but instead of preparing everything, you will just give them a moment or a place where they are able to learn about themselves, about their group, about their culture, but also about SEAL training. So you find them together in a room and make sure that they do interact, because in the beginning, especially when you work with international kids, they intend to stay together and talk in their own language, but instead, as a mentor, you try to get them out, try to get the watches mixed so they mix up and mingle a bit and learn from each other and all the different cultures. So facilitator is also an important part. And last but not least, you will be a communicator. And this can be a communicator from individual to individual or as a mentor to a group, but also from the trainee group to the crew. And for me, the last thing is a very important thing. Speaking as a crew member, I think the mentors are very important. They facilitate a lot for the trainees, but to be able to work together on a SEAL training program, you need them to communicate with each other to be able to make the program work that you thought of on forehand. And then I will talk later about communication in view of evaluation, so I will save that for later.
So one thing I'd like all of you to do, and we kind of did it in the last session if you were in this room, but I'd like you all to stand up. Why? Because it's the last session on a Saturday and you're all pretty tired right now. I know, I've been sitting in your seat too before. And stretch. There you go. I just mentored you through that, right? Alright, you can sit back down. Thank you for the participation, everybody. So a few things to being a mentor. Knowledge and ability to teach is your number one thing that makes you a mentor. Looking back at when I was a mentor, especially the first years, I knew that was a thing that I had. I knew more about the ship than other people, and I could lead groups of people. But, there were times for me when, I thought it was age. My age made me a better mentor than other people. As I learned over a few years, that's not true. And people would ask me, how old are you? So, though it's small, and for other people it might be other things, for me it was age. And so, whenever people would ask me questions about that, I'd divert away from it. After a while, I learned that's not a problem. So again, always go back to remember your knowledge and ability to teach is what makes you a mentor. And then keep learning, but don't forget you are a mentor. So a lot of times we come from, not too long ago we were a trainee. And when we were a trainee, we were learning lots and lots and lots. And you're very enthusiastic. And now you're in this mentor position. And you might still be given time to learn, which is good. Take that time to learn. However, remember, you're still a mentor, and that is your role. So don't forget about that and just be learning the whole time. And remember, you're not alone. If certain situations, whether it be the trainees that you are mentoring, if you're unsure of how to handle a situation, whether that's behavior or just any other type of advice or other serious problems on the ship, remember, you're not alone. You have the crew on board, specifically the officers and the captain to talk to. And something that is, many people can confuse with being a mentor is that they're supposed to talk a lot. It's not always true. Being a mentor is listening, and a lot of times facilitating listening from others and getting other people also to talk. It's really you're facilitating the group conversation. You're not talking to the group. Although that being said, it's always different for other people. So keep that in mind. You can always mentor to your strengths, but you still need to listen a lot. And then own your mistakes. I think that'll kind of go back to my last note here, lead by example. But remember, you're not the super seaman yet, and you still have a long ways to go. So own your mistakes, and that way the mentors see that too. And then after explanations. One thing, there may come times when you just need to rip that rope out of that trainee's hands because you need to get it done or for safety reasons. But always make sure that you go back and tell that trainee, what they should have done in order, who knows, maybe next time you don't need to do that. And then all of this kind of goes back to my number one point down here, lead by example.
So why do we need mentors? I mean, you have crew members, mostly very able in coaching and training trainees. I mean, that's why we do SEAL training. But what is the necessity of a mentor? In my vision, I think you need mentors to be able to coach the group you have as best as you can. By keeping them apart, well, not completely apart, but by having different roles as mentor and crew, you can, as a mentor, focus on the group and the individuals, and as a crew member, focus on the SEAL training. This mostly will be combined in the moment itself. I mean, mentors will do SEAL training, and crew members will do mentoring as well. But it's good to have different roles so you can keep focused on what you're doing or what you're supposed to be doing. This way it improves SEAL training as well, because you can keep focused and make sure that, for example, in the harbor, there will be programs as well. And when the crew doesn't have time to interact or keep the trainees occupied, the mentors will have time. They can think about a harbor program where the trainees can walk around, see something of the city, and explore. Because there is, after time on sea, they really would like to be on the quayside and see something more than the ship. For that, for example, is the mentor quite handy. But also on moments on the sea when there's a lot to do, and the mentors can play a managing role in organizing all the trainees, because at the end of the day, the mentors know the trainees mostly better than the crew members do. The organizing the non-sailing aspects. It's like sailing can be quite active, but as we all know, some of the watches can be quite boring as well. It's just being on the lookout or waiting for a tack or a maneuver to happen. And in these moments, when the crew can also have input, but the mentors will have this whole range of activities they can put in. This can be a small activity, but also bigger plans like having country presentations or bigger games as the murder game going on. And last but not least, I think evaluation, the trip and the feelings on board is very important. The mentors will take a time that can either be after every watch to evaluate how the trainees are doing and how they are feeling. You can do this either in a very professional way, as in an official way, but you can also do it just on the spot. Like, how did you experience this watch? Do you want anything improved, or would you like to see anything different? And halfway the trip, you will make sure that everybody still feels okay. I mean, if you don't want to talk about it every day, that's okay. But halfway the trip, are there big things you want to have changed, or maybe you want to keep them that way? And then at the end of the trip, at least that's what we do with the Windseeker trips, we have this evaluation form where the trainees fill in what they liked about this trip, how they liked the crew, how they liked the ship, how they liked the food, but also how they liked the guidance of the mentors. And this is a very, very nice way of learning about what you did and what you can improve the next time. Recruiting is a big part of what Windseeker actually does when I work for them. They have a big network where they recruit trainees. Of course, the mentors will be involved in this because they have their own network as well, and they use the ship as well for their networks. So mentors will be involved, especially if they have experience on forehand, to talk to their own trainees on years before, or talk about in meetings, giving a presentation, and maybe even the schools or the sailing clubs where they've been to. But mostly, well, you all know the bigger organizations who post it on social media or via email where you read about it. Then luckily, with the tallship races, every harbour provides trainees as well, so they come in from that way as well. So then, how you keep the trainees, or how do you keep the memory of the experience they had alive? Well, every trip we try to make the trainees to have a logbook. That means that every watch they will write a little bit about what they experienced during the watch. And all those logs gained together, we will send them at the end of the trip to them. Then you often have very excited trainees who bring their cameras and GoPros and make a movie out of their experiences, put the nice music under it, and at the end of the trip you have a fabulous memory to show not only friends and family, but also have a very good memory for yourself. And then the last thing I want to talk about is one of my favorite memories of the trip, which is also a very good evaluation, is the 6-month letter. It's a thing we do at the end of the trip, mostly one of the last days, where we give the trainees an envelope with their name on it, and we put it on the table. And there are random pieces of paper where they can write on about another person or about themselves, whatever they prefer, to tell about their experience, really, what they thought about you, or what they liked, or even what they disliked, just to give away a memory. And then 6 months later, we will send this letter again to them. So what I got, I just came back from sailing from work, and I just came home. And it's more or less 6 months ago that I had one of the Tall Ship Races trips with the International Exchange on board. And I got all those letters from all these trainees telling me about a wonderful time they had, and that they missed the boats and they would like to come back. And by receiving them, I mean they will receive the letters as well. They will be reminded of the trip they had, and they will hopefully join us again and otherwise have an incredible memory of what they experienced.
So, for those of you who don't know, apparently I had to explain this a few times, but the shape here is a loop-de-loop. The big thing about the loop-de-loop and how does that apply to sail training here? Luckily, I have my wonderful whiteboard over here. I'll make it youthful by drawing a nice loop-de-loop. So, it starts with your program. Your program, we could say, is right here. What your program should do in order to create effective mentors and youth mentors and develop them into what could be future mentors is, you need to have teaching and mentoring already within your program, and many of you do, so that's good. And then when you have your trainees out on the voyages, give them, your mentors should be giving the trainees opportunities to teach each other and become mentors. And from there, good. Again, this is where the loop starts to come in back to play. What your mentor should be looking for is good learners are not always good teachers. So again, what I said with being a mentor, a lot of it resonates with finding a mentor. And then develop trust over time. It's not all tall ship organizations have opportunities to do this, but if you have the time to bring a trainee back and back and back, you start developing a relationship with that trainee and you start developing trust with him. And last, to get you guys awake, look for excitement. Your trainee should have excitement in what he does. And, an excited teacher can usually teach well.
So now I will talk about the benefits for the organization to get out of a mentor trip. We think that it is very important that the trainees and the organization get an equal amount of benefits out of a mentor trip, and that should be balanced as much as possible. So first we just take a very brief look of what those two sides are looking for. Most obviously the trainees are looking for a great sailing experience. They want to meet new people and they want to get to know life on board. If they have sailed before, they want to get to know a different vessel and the organization on board. And last but not least, also the trainees would never say no to funding. The organization gets a little bit more complex. The organization wants to get better known. The organization, whether it is an NSTO or a vessel operator, it doesn't matter. So the organization wants to get better known in terms of its structure and what other things they also organize and how, the various projects that it offers. And it is important to notice that trainees, the more the trainees know about the organization and the structure, the more they get interested in it, and the more they're also willing to tell their friends about it and to recommend the trip and the organization to market it. The organization also looks for fresh ideas because in board meetings there's always the same people talking, from the same backgrounds, talking about the same ideas that they have. And the organization can use the trainees to generate fresh ideas because the trainees come from different kind of backgrounds, studying different things, usually as on youth trips. So they can have a great input from the trainees. Michelle has also talked about the evaluation of the trip at the end. We from the German NSTO also do that, and we integrated a question that the trainees should think about, like new project ideas that we can generate. And actually what we've learned from our evaluations is that trainees, because we've mainly organized trips for sailing, to go sailing, but we've seen that the trainees are not only looking to go sailing, but also looking to learn about sailing theory and about knots and everything aside. And that is very difficult for trainees that don't live very close to the coast to get that. So we, from our NSTO, developed new projects also more in the south of Germany to serve their needs. So through that evaluation, we identified those needs from the trainees, and now we develop new projects to serve those, which is of a great value for us. So the organization can serve the trainees' needs with giving them a great sailing adventure experience, and the organization can generate a benefit out of the trainees with their different backgrounds and their fresh ideas. How we do that on our trips is that we conduct a workshop. We call it the NSTO workshop, that we divide in two parts. So on every trip, a mentor conducts such a workshop. In the first part, the mentor tells the trainees about the organization, so about our NSTO. We go into the details, what kind of member vessels we have, what possibilities there are to get funded. We tell them about the tall ships races and the whole structure, our other youth projects, and also the STI. And it turns out that trainees are really interested in that structure. So that's the first part, to make us more well known and better known. And then the second part, we group up the trainees in groups of about 5 people, and we give every group a question about topics like marketing or sponsors, so also the image of our NSTO. And then we get them to think about things, how we can, for example, market the NSTO better. And they actually come up with great ideas. We give them usually 1 or also 2 days, depends on how long the trip is, to come up with ideas. So they sit down and they really think about it, and they take it serious, and that's a great advantage. And after those 1 or 2 days, they think about their ideas, they present them. And in terms of that workshop, there's some tips for the mentors in terms of the preparation, some do's and don'ts. First of all, prepare the workshop. It sounds very simple, but it's the basis for a good and working workshop with good outcomes. So the better the preparation of the workshop, the better also the input from the trainees, and that results in a better output for the organization. So it really comes down to the mentor. Also, the mentor should take enough material, because the more the trainees know about the organization, the more they want to recommend it to their friends. So they actually look for flyers and other material to hand out to their friends. Also, you should plan in enough time, because the trainees have great ideas and they do want to develop them, and they do want to, present them in the end. So good ideas take time, so don't hurry them. And also, there should be clear questions, which also brings me to the don'ts, because you should put groups, or that's how we do it. We have groups to specific topics, so the topics should not get mixed up. So they really have one topic to focus on, and that they can, work with. And also don't set a time limit for presenting the results, because the trainees really put effort into that, and they really want to present their results. And if you, for example, have 5 groups, then say, let's discuss the ideas within half an hour, maybe some of the good ideas get cut out and will get forgotten about in the worst case. So now I would like you to think about things that you would like your mentor to find out from the trainee. So what would you like to ask the trainees from your mentor? If you send a mentor to a trip, what would you like to generate? What kind of benefits? Yeah, exactly.
For the sake of this, I know that this is being filmed, so I'm going to start passing around the microphone. Anybody else? Of course, everybody gets quiet when I pull this out. One thing I kind of wanted to talk about, back to when I first started being a mentor, and when, my experience in Oman, something that, you would think is very obvious, and it really depends on the culture, is that my first time being a mentor, I had no idea I was actually a mentor. I was told, you're going to come on board, and we're bringing you on board because you got a great personality, Brian. And I was like, sweet. What am I supposed to do with that great personality? And from there, I did not, after a while, I kind of saw what my role was, which was a mentor. But when I was first starting out, nobody made it clear to me what I was doing and, what I should have been doing. So I just kind of wung it. And I think looking back at when I went to Oman and probably in my later years, STI and one of the later ships that I worked on, they made it very clear to me that I was a mentor and that was my role on board the ship. And it's also really important for the organizations or the crews to make it very clear what you expect out of your mentors as well. And, if you're not doing that, you should kind of look into, first off, again, looking back into, is my program set up for mentoring? Is mentoring within the culture? Some ships aren't, and that's okay. But look into your ship culture, and is your focus sail trainees on board for a longer extended period of time, whether it's a few days, a week, or are you just kind of a sightseeing boat? So yeah, keep that in mind. And then, another thing, we had the communication throughout the whole time of what was expected of me. And then I got feedback after several years. So that would be another key thing, is giving your mentors feedback. Now that I've said that, are there any other questions? Yeah.
Thank you. I think one of the major questions for all sail training organizations now is how to sustain the organization grow the organization, how do we get young people in to continue the mission of that group? And when you think about mentoring, when you think about coaching, how people learn the way of the ship, perhaps in past generations, when I was coming up in the 70s and the 80s, the relationship was much more coaching slash directive. The interface was trainee and crew, and you learned from the crew, you learned fast, or you got off. And that was kind of accepted with that kind of rough and ready way of doing business. But one of the things that, whenever you get a bunch of old guys like myself together, we always end up wringing our hands about what do we need to do differently for smart, capable young people today? Because there's a perception by people of my age that somehow millennials, or whatever you want to call young folks these days, are fundamentally different. I don't think they are, but I figured I'd ask you.
I don't know if this completely answers your question, but the way I got introduced to being a mentor and get what I learned out was well, the first time I was a mentor, I got two experienced mentors with me. So it was basically by seeing what they did and what the crew did, I learned, well, by falling and getting up again, what worked for me. And we saw that a lot of new mentors or new trainees that wanted to get in that role were struggling with how to do that. So in the Netherlands, we have this youth organization where we decided that we want to do some kind of mentor training. So we're going to do this year as well. And then we get all the mentors together from the previous years, but also the mentors who are going to be mentors coming year, and have this little workshop. So Windseeker will speak a bit about their experiences, and the mentors themselves will speak about their experiences and gather like activities they did and what worked, and hopefully to pass on the stick. So I guess it's not that different from the early days, but it's maybe, I don't know, a bit more get together.
I'll actually disagree and say that millennials are very different than the people in your generation. And I think a program like this actually shows a little bit why millennials are a little bit different. By engaging and empowering people that are still considered, young, relatively new to the sail training world, and empowering them to be a mentor, you're giving that millennial that ability to be in charge of something, to have responsibility, and to be recognized for the skills that they have, even though they're under 25 years old. I think I actually had no idea what this session was going to be, and I didn't know this mentoring thing was actually happening. So I think it's a really great program that seems to be going on, and I think it's a great way to help with millennials. I am actually a millennial as well. I was like the first graduating class, 2000. So.
I mean, I guess I'll just give an example of what our organisation does. Every year we take around 500 young people sailing. We are a small boat organisation. What we do is, within each of those voyages, if there are young people who we think will contribute well to the organisation in the future, or could be potential sea staff, we will identify them on their youth voyage, and the skipper or the captain will recommend them to what we call our Young Leader Development Programme. And this is a programme we've been running for 15, nearly 20 years. It costs us about £30,000 to £40,000 a year to run, but we actually get funding for it from various people within the country. And this programme allows us to take up to 12 young people per year that have sailed with us throughout that year. It then allows us to take them on an 18-month programme, which takes them from being young people, training them up how to work with other young people, actually on learning within themselves, learning from experienced sea staff, and then taking them on what we call a long voyage to actually teach them the sailing side of things. So we work it from, if you have to be a good sailor to do what we do, you have to be a good youth worker, and we can teach youth sail. So we actually we invest in spending money on finding young people that have sailed with us who we think could be good, or bringing them back. And I think that's an approach that could work quite well for other organisations.
Sorry, and while I'm walking over here to pass off the mic, Chip, my 2 cents is, and this is kind of coming from marketing background, which I come from, is those mentors also. I mean, the thing about them, again, we're thinking in terms of youth mentoring youth. So your mentors are a little bit younger, and a lot of times word of mouth is by far, the most effective tool to get other youth involved in sail training. So I don't know. Again, it's just an idea. I don't know if that answers your question.
Thank you, Brian. One question I want to direct to yourself to start with, where you said when you first arrived, not really knowing what your role would be. Would you have benefited from a prescriptive job description laid out black and white before you took it up to see whether or not A, that's something you wanted to do, and then B, something you could actually carry out as a set of instructions when on board?
To answer that question, personally, for me, maybe not necessarily black and white, but something, it would have been a little more nice to know what I was doing. That being said, I don't know if the organization I was working for at that time necessarily had it in mind that I was going to be a mentor. I mean, I feel like they still couldn't have an answer for you. That being said, it's just that role was what I realized I was doing, because I was not quite at the experience yet where I was a full, mentor, or for a full deckhand at that point. So, but looking at that time, there were a lot of situations that I found myself in where some input and some guidelines to go off of would have been very helpful.
So developing on from that, to capture what you guys provide, I'm interested in the process of succession planning. And we start off, as you call it, with trainees, and then almost the mentors are the next step as to what happens in sail training. But then there's a huge way to go there and after. So how are you encouraged yourselves? Is there a program other than what our good friend over there mentioned that gives you feedback on the ship? Is there someone on the ship that talks to you about how you've done and how you're encouraged maybe to take further steps within the organisation?
I guess that depends a lot on what kind of ship you end up and which kind of organization you work with. Me personally, I've worked on ships where I did get the feedback and where the evaluation forms were evaluated and where I did get feedback from Wheat Seeker about how I did and how I could improve better. And what we used to do is also sit together with the mentors we work with and see, like, okay, how did you do? How did you feel about it? And do you think we can do it better or different, or maybe take over some roles from each other? Because, well, you do have different roles on board. So, not officially, I guess, but depending on where you end up, yes, definitely you will get feedback. You finished?
I have another answer for your question. You asked him if he would have chosen differently if he had known what he was getting himself into. I've experienced many times in sail training exactly not knowing what you're getting yourself into is the best part. That somebody says, I believe you can do this, and then just shove you in a direction, and you find yourself doing things and learning so much. So part of becoming a mentor is not knowing that you're on your way to become a mentor, but to being shoved in a direction of being a mentor. And I know that that's what happened to me, and I know that that's exactly what I'm doing to young people now, like younger than myself. I go like, I like you, you're good, come here. And they go like, no, I don't think that's a good idea. And I go, yes it is, this is a great idea. And I was like, you can say no afterwards.
Thank you. I'm just interested to find out whether you, as mentors, believe that you have gained in your knowledge on the vessel and how it works faster as the result of having to pass it on as teachers, or whether you would have benefited, you believe, if you had not been acting as a mentor, whether you think it's an effective learning tool being a mentor.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, I mean, thinking about it, I'm somebody who learns by teaching, and so yes, that helped me a lot, and it made me more, through teaching and mentoring. I mean, as Matilda said, being thrown into it, definitely it helped. I'm not saying you should, throwing people into it is bad. I'm sorry if I misled you there, but um, yeah, I definitely benefited as a sailor and as a teacher in realizing situations that your trainees may have more because I was a mentor.
Sorry, just a follow-on question. Obviously, there are some vessels already mentioned providing feedback to the mentors on how they're doing. Are those same vessels asking mentors to evaluate what the crew are doing in terms of the way they're working with trainees? I'm interested in the closed loop.
It looks like Michelle can answer that one.
Yeah, for sure.
I just wanted to ask, I myself have been lucky enough to sail on small ships with my current job, but also to experience tall ship sailing and the differences that those have. Obviously, one of the problems we have as an organisation is the fact that we only have small vessels. A lot of UK sail training is small boat led. Is there anything now for you guys that we as operators could be doing better to get young people experiencing both tall ship sailing and small ship sailing at the same time?
I gotta think about that one for a second. I mean, off the top of my head, I think in the presentation we talked a little bit about, the mentors may have new ideas and they may have ideas for new projects. So you could try and foster that, among your mentors and even your trainees as well. Maybe they have ideas on how to get more people in sail training and better the sail training experience. I don't know. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, slightly. I suppose maybe just for that, do you guys feel as mentors that we as operator are telling you guys about what we're doing enough and the different programs that are there and the different opportunities, or is it a case that we need to be communicating with you guys more? This is this voyage we've got, or like Robbie talked about the Young Leaders program that we have, and think that if you guys had more of that ready to hand for when you're with young people on board the boats.
Michelle and Eva may have a different answer from me. I mean, I kind of feel like the mentoring in the United States is a little less rigid or formal, I should say, in the United States. Personally, yeah, it's if you have information about, say, this group of trainees that's coming on, if they do have specifics, sometimes that's good to know. A while ago, after every now and then you have those horrible voyages, and we call the one where I came from the 24-hour voyage. It was not supposed to be a 24-hour voyage. And yeah, after that, we sat down with all the sail trainers that were on board, and we discussed how to tackle that problem next time and how to deal with it.
Any more questions or comments? Experiences?
I guess I just had a bit of a comment about what kind of expectations people have for mentors, at least from the programs that I've worked with, which is mostly the brigantines on the lakes. We don't use the word mentor, but I think that might fit into the role of what we would call a petty officer, which is someone who's a a step above a trainee and they're working to become a certified crew member. And everybody on board those are quite young, so it very much is like peer-to-peer mentoring. And I think it's really good to clarify to those people who suddenly have quite a bit of responsibility on their shoulders that although they're trying to learn more about the boat, it actually is really valuable that they get to know the trainees and that they make them feel comfortable and they do everything you were talking about with mentoring, which is like getting to know the individual, to kind of taking care of that social side of things, not just the technical sail training, and that it's great because then they know that what they have to offer is really valuable, and that they are coming on board to be an important part and to be kind of like the glue of the group and to make people feel comfortable and not homesick and that kind of thing. Because I think that's a really important step to making them be able to learn. And the same thing where if they feel like maybe they're not, they haven't achieved the higher rank yet, they don't know so much, I think it helps with their own confidence to be able to say, oh, I can show the trainees, like maybe I've only been here for 1 year, but I can give back to these people. Like last year I was learning the ropes and now I'm teaching the ropes, even if it's a simple thing. So I think being able to clarify the mentor role, no matter whether you call them mentors or not, is really great. And what you said about the age, it's not age that makes a big difference, because a lot of our petty officers, they can be 13 or 14 years old, and some of the trainees will be 16 or 17 years old. And to have that confidence that even though you're far younger, and if you think about high school, like if you're 13 and you suddenly find yourself in charge or like teaching someone who's much older than you, you really feel like you have a lot to offer the world, that you have something to give back.
I agree with what you're saying about that. And on Niagara, we have an apprentice program, and we don't call them mentors, but how we describe that is that you're the trainee's best friend. You're the one that's going to be up there beside them. You're going to be the one that can show them what is going on, and so it really kind of is that mentorship type of program. But incorporating what you guys are talking about into it, I think is great, and I think I agree 100%.
I was just wondering if you knew of particular programs that had a training program for mentors, as in like how to be a mentor, skills to learn, and actually teaching mentors to become mentors. And if not, is that something that, using your experience, could be something that could be developed in the future?
Well, speaking from the Netherlands, we are working on that. We have the youth organization who is really interested in giving that an official form. For now, it's just an unofficial way of the workshop I told you about, and but we are planning on making that on paper.
Murray, were you suggesting that become a youth council project?
I just want to say that in Estonia we're also working on the program of taking our young, we call them watch leaders, not mentors, and we're training them up to be the people that are responsible for training activities in the ports and to understand about navigation, ropes, and the boat, how it works. So fill in the role that the professional crew are having a tough time managing sometimes when you have to do a lot of other things at the same time. So we have an official program running with it, and we're making workshops every week, and we start giving them like sail practice as well. So we're going to take them out to the archipelago, doing navigational trips. So they're going to be really, really ready, and then we're going to give them to the trainees and see what's left of them.
The organization I come from, when I was going to start to become a mentor, I was part of both rigging off the ship in winter and getting it rigged up again in summer, and I was part of winter maintenance, so I really knew the ship by heart by the time I was going to go on board. And also we had a flight captain who had several hours of training in leadership skills, who came to us and talked about like the barriers you can have in language or in stuff around going on, and like how to make yourself heard, how to speak, things to think about that you might not think about otherwise. But that being said, there was nothing about how to be there for other people or so on. And that is something I think you might need to learn by doing trial and error and so on. But what we did in Sweden now was that we realized that we have several organizations with similar riggings, schooners and so on, that don't have a lot of resources, and we're a bit short of crew, and we're a bit short of, well, people to teach crew and so on. So we've actually started a project to educate our mentors, or whatever we call them, together. So we have a weekend every spring where we do some safety training and some rig training and some mentoring training and so on in general together. We still have some work to put into this, but we are certainly getting somewhere. We're getting better and better every year at it. So this is something that I can recommend to. So don't be alone, like Brian says, you're not alone.
All right. Well, I think let's see, got about 15 minutes here. But thank you guys for coming, and enjoy the rest of your conference. I do believe Robbie has a few announcements.
That's great. So first of all, let's say thanks to these guys for presenting. Hopefully you have all learned something. These guys are available for chats either after or during the gala dinner. You usually find them standing at the bar. If you'd like to buy them something, that's up. So so on the tables you have your forms. If you can all please fill them in by circling 1 for everything. And then attaching a $20 bill at the back, that would be great. And on top of that, for the coffee, because we're now in the last session, the coffee will be in the ballroom, where the opening plenary was yesterday, and also where the closing plenary will be at 5 o'clock, I think. Coffee from 4:15. But if you'd like to leave now, that's absolutely fine. Thank you very much, guys.